So one of my amazing subscribers goes by the name of Mark Power 4831, catchy name, wants to know, with the iCarsoft, all of the Mercedes that this thing can talk to, how many Mercedes can this do? I actually get asked this question a fair bit, so I'm going to get straight into it, not talk too much because it gets a bit boring, and I'll show you on my iCarsoft because they do it via the chassis number and it's easier for me to show you than it is to talk about. So straight into it.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.
So from the main screen, go into diagnosis. It's going to bring up all my cars. I've got a multi-car system. I can do 10 different car makes. And I've got these cars as well. So let's move over to Mercedes-Benz and see what Mercedes-Benz iCarsoft can talk to. This here is the list of the software. You can update it. There's a link below for you how to do that. 11.3 is the earliest version I had. I could delete those. And then the latest version is 11.85. And when they update it, they give you extra functions, etc. Sometimes they add extra cars. So I'm going to go into the last software that I have, which is 11.85. So here it's going to list all of the Mercedes the iCarsoft can actually deal with, and there's 56 of them. You can go to the next page, by the way, just by pressing the right arrow. You haven't got to keep tabbing down. So look at the top there, 107s, that's an earlier one. 124, you know, the 124 was probably one of the best Mercedes that was ever made. It's an amazing story. They squeezed in this engine. They actually had Porsche help them. It was during the oil crisis. America wanted a bigger engine. They couldn't get it in the car. They had to flare the wheel arches out. There's an amazing little story if you look it up. But they ended up with this over-engineered, beautiful car. I remember driving one, sitting in the driver's seat. It was such a lovely place to be. I remember the left-hand side for me, which is the passenger side, the mirror being a different, narrower shape than it was to the right-hand side, the driver's. Just little thoughts like that, because you need the height on the passenger side more than you need the length. 124s, 126, the 201. And then going to the A classes, the A168, which is the early one, A169. Next page. We got the A176, the AMG 190. The Mercedes 190, that was my first Mercedes I ever had at the age of about 19. I remember it well, and I remember how big I felt driving that on the road. I thought it wasn't going to fit. It's the amazing thing to think, though, that that Mercedes 190 is actually as small as my little Honda Civic now, but back then cars were smaller and it felt so big on the road. It didn't even have electric windows, it had the wind-up back windows, but it looked lovely, it looked really special. Again, I had it lowered slightly as well. I had a beautiful body kit on it. So that was my first introduction into the world of Mercedes, and I wish I kept hold of it, I really did. The B245 and 246, then into the C classes, 202, 203. C-Class, that was a lovely car as well, but I found, though, it was around that time when Mercedes had an issue with the bodywork in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think they used a water-based paint, and we tended to see a few of those cars, unfortunately, on the road with a fair bit of rust, etc. on the bodywork, but the engine and the gearbox was really nice. C204, C205, and then into the CLs, we got the 215s, 216, then the CLAs, 117s, CLCs 203, then the CLK 208. The W208, what a car that was, wow. That there was the compressor. It had the same front end as the E-Class. It came with a leather interior. It had that lovely compressor sound when you put your foot down. It was a two-door, but there was plenty of room in the back. Really loved that car. Unfortunately, again, it was built around that time that you had that issue with the paintwork, and they used a water-based paint system. Then the CLK 209, which is the later version of the 208, obviously. CLS 218, then the 219, then the E-Classes now, the 207.
Baby, I'm a gangster too.
I had the E-Class, which was that frog-eyed one with the front. I always felt the front was a little bit too high, so I actually lowered it down, had it in silver. Lovely car. I even swapped the interior out, which had the cloth interior. I didn't have a lot of money back then, so I bought a second-hand full leather interior, including the door cards, and I changed a lot, and it really gave you that luxurious feeling. I felt pretty special driving that car until some idiot went into the back of me and wrote the car off. E211, E212s, E213, 238, then into the G series, the 461s, the 463s. GLs, the 164, the 166, GLA 156, GLC the 253, big car that, GLE 166, GLE 292, GLK 204, GLS 166, the Maybach, if you're lucky enough to have one of those, the 240. Then we got the MLs, the early 163s, then the 164s, then the 166s. Then we go into the R series, the 250, the 251. Then the S classes, the 140, the 217s, 220s, 221s, 222s. Those are some luxury vehicles, those. Getting into the last few now, the SL129. Great little coupe that. And of course, my favourite, the SL230. And this is what we're looking at today. This is my Mercedes SL230. Love this car. It's been one of my favourite, in fact probably is my most favourite Mercedes. The engineering involved in this car takes me back to a time when it was proper German engineering. The quality and the extent to which they went to when they made this car was one of the most expensive cars on the planet. It was probably one of the most technically advanced cars on the planet. Now in today's standards, there's a lot of things on this which you kind of look at and laugh a little bit, like it hasn't even got a touchscreen and all the rest. But I love that. I love the fact that it's only just out of the 90s, the best decade I think for cars, 80s and the 90s. And it's still got amazing features like heated and cooling seats. It even came with the telephone in there, although I swapped it over for a Bluetooth. It's probably going to stay with me for a long time. Then the newer SL231. The SLK 170, a very popular little car. The SLK 171, then the newer 172. The SLR, if you're lucky enough to have one of them bad boys, the 199. And lastly, the SLS 197. Okay, so look, I hope you got some use out of that, because this little iCarsoft is my underdog. I've had this probably for about 5 years now. It's one of the first diagnostics that I got. And I did a video, it was actually during the COVID times, dark times they were, because somebody asked me what can it do and how you clear codes. And that video, which is down below, has done incredibly well. And it was actually the start of why I decided to create my little Groove On channel, because as I've got into it, I've had more and more people ask me questions, just like today. What can you actually use on the iCarsoft? For example, what are the different Mercedes that the iCarsoft can do? Likewise, I have Range Rover, I have Volkswagen, I have Fiat. And if you want to know the same sort of question on just exactly which models that this can do, then let me know down below and I'll do a little video just for you. Just lastly, the iCarsoft, I've heard people talk about there's kind of clone copies out there. So I made sure that the links that I provide are not affiliated by iCarsoft. I just have a lot of videos on them because of the popularity, and they're officially from Amazon. It's on my Amazon Groove On store, and you're very welcome to have a look at that, and you'll get the genuine iCarsoft from there. So thanks for watching. I appreciate your support and all the lovely subscribers.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.